Hey everyone, it's Jmart from JCat Gaming TV, and I'm actually here because I wanted to do a podcast about a subject that I absolutely love, and that's MMORPGs. To give you a little background on myself, I've been playing MMOs for 20 plus years. So we're going to go through a timeline of our experience with MMOs, because I'm actually here with my brother, Traumahawk, who I've been playing a lot of MMOs with most of my life. So, how you doing?
Hey folks, Trauma here. So, kind of like what Jmart said, I've been playing games not necessarily as long as Jmart has. I've been playing for about probably 15 years or so, 17 years. Mm-hmm. But mostly before that, I was pretty much into RTS. I was into Civilizations, Alpha Centauri, stuff like that.
Yeah, you're a big Command and Conquer.
Yeah, Command and Conquer. Definitely a different series for a different time. Mm-hmm. But, so I really look forward to kind of strolling down memory lane here. Just kind of a forewarning, or not a forewarning, but just a warning to everybody. I think for a lot of these games, especially for the games that we played a lot, we will be kind of looking at these games with a little bit of rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, because they're your memories, and like you happen to cherish your memories. And we're also going to be going through the MMOs that we've experienced. So there's some MMOs that we might mention, but they're not some that we played, so we might not go in depth in some of your favorite MMOs because we personally didn't play them, even though we played MMOs throughout the whole entire series, but we were playing just different games at the time.
But I definitely encourage, if there's a game that we just brushed over or we didn't mention at all, mention them in the comments. You know, what did you like about them? What didn't you?
What did we miss out on?
Right, exactly.
So I hope you guys enjoy the show, and we're about to get started. All right, fam, and let's just get started in the conversation. Like I said, we'll be going through a timeline all the way from pre-1997 to present. We'll probably be breaking it up in segments, so we should have like 3 different episodes at least. I think today we'll pretty much be going through like 97 through 2004.
Yeah, that sounds about right, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything you would like to start with?
For me, obviously, I haven't been playing as long as Jmart when it comes to the MMO market. But the one game that I always fascinated me that you played was GemStone III, which was a text-based game. So that's something I really kind of want to hear you talk about again, just because when I first started listening to listen to you talk about MMOs, the cool thing about it was the stories that you would tell. Mm-hmm. I didn't even have an idea that it was text based until I actually came to visit you and Dave that you guys were playing.
Yeah.
And it was, wait a minute, what? So if you can't just kind of go over that a little bit. And
yeah, because like that was a cool part about the text based game. So when I was really big into role playing games. Even before that, I used to play the pen and paper Dungeons and Dragons and the Ultima series when they were just like single player PC games. So I always loved fantasy genre. So I remember going over to one of my friends' houses and he was playing this RPG that was all text based. And I'm like, yo, that sounds stupid. And yeah. And so I think it was like 2 weeks later, I was at home and I was bored and I fired it up. And I was hooked on this game for years. It was 100% text-based. It was GemStone III. I swear, for a whole summer, we were that episode of South Park. We were the definition of that. We played that game from the moment we woke up until the time we went to bed. And by we, I mean me and my friend. His name was Dave. We had one computer. And when I'd be playing, then I'd go to sleep. He would wake up and he would play, and vice versa. It was insane. We had the pizza plates on speed dial.
Just kind of a little bit. When you'd walk into that room, the walls were there was just piles of pizza boxes. I mean, it was actually quite impressive. But I remember you going into the room at the beginning of summer, and you emerging sometime in the fall. with like a golem-like quality, like my precious.
Yeah,
yes.
it was a fun game though. It was like that was like for like 3 months, but I played for like 3 years. But yeah, it was like for a summer, we just got hooked on it, and thank God we were like 17 and didn't have responsibilities. But yeah, so the cool part about that game is that it was text based, so everything you can do in it was all through your imagination, so to speak. But like to attack, you'd have to hit like slash attack kobold right eye, you know, to aim your attacks. And it had a big social aspect to it because leveling took forever. Like if you became a lord, which you got at level 20, that was rare because like you had like this mind that once you got so much XP, your mind filled up and you had to sit and rest for it to calm down.
Wow.
But yeah, so it had tons of social aspects. You had to like go up for like mass spells and everything. And I loved how it made people like famous in it.
Yeah. I remember you talking about because you became a Sir, I think, level 20, right? Lord.
Mm-hmm.
You talking about blades and I forget the other guy's name. But Giant Shield.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd almost he'd almost talk about him like you almost knew him.
Yeah, like yeah, because like they were like famous characters in the game. Because inside that game, there used to be these invasions that the GMs would send these things to like attack the town or whatever. And one time they sent a invasion, and it was like the Rat King came, and nobody could do anything. The Rat King was just destroying the town, and Blades and Giant Shield came in, they defeated them. And since then, I actually pay homage to them in a lot of games by naming my characters Blades or Giant Shield, even though Blades always taken because the name's just edgy, I guess.
Right.
But edgy.
I see what you did there.
Hey, you. But yeah, it was a great time. Like I said, I played for like 3 years. I played a wizard named Nalaman, and I also had a bard named Kyrus. And the bard was kind of cool because in that game, you didn't necessarily know the abilities of items, so you'd literally have to like do a script and sing your own lyrics to find the abilities that the item had.
That I did not know.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Hi, it's the cat. But yeah, it was really cool, like all the in-depth. You couldn't whisper people from across the world, so you either had to find like a ranger who had like an ability called like Whispering Willow to like talk to people like not near you, or you had to like find an amulet that that were connected.
Yeah, and I think that was, and I also remember going in there, and, back especially in the old D&D games when you would map out on a the grid paper, and you guys just had piles of these maps of these different dungeons and everything else, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, it's because there was a town that was really far away. I can't remember the name of it. It was something ice. I can't remember the name for the life of me for whatever reason. And so from the landings where we were at, it was like this big, long, epic journey. It took like 2 hours to walk it, and you had to walk across ice that you would slip and fall. You fell into you fought like a lot of enemies that were extremely difficult to beat, but it was so hard to get there. Like you almost needed a map. So I remember we had like that graph paper on the wall of how to make that journey.
Right.
Yeah, it was insane. You're right. It was a lot like D&D. It was.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of helped me wrap my head around it. I remember Jmart finally talked me into coming up and trying to play the game a little bit. And I rolled my character, my first ever character, Galveston. Not to be confused with the city in Texas.
Yeah, that's what I always assumed. Like, are you from Texas?
No, I named him after Galvatron, Megatron's alter ego when he died. But, yeah. And I even forgot what I rolled. I couldn't... I
want to say it was a warrior.
Probably. Knowing me, it probably was. But one of the hard things about the game was really the text base. I just could not put myself in the mindset of trying to get into the world. But I did find it really interesting. But, it was just funny because you'd see a rat, or, running through a dungeon.
Catacombs.
In the catacombs. And I'm trying to chase it, and I got Jmart yelling at me, type chase. I'm like, why? You know, it's because that's the way players kind of
knew as yours that you're chasing. Yeah, because the creatures just had a chance of randomly going.
Right. So that was, you know, after playing it for a couple hours, I think I tried. That was just something I couldn't get into, but you played that for a long time. And the funny thing is the game's still around.
Yeah, no. And it's really funny because last time I checked, it was like probably like less than a year ago. Just for fun, I went and checked their website. And at the time, there was like 900 players logged in. When I played during peak time, there was like 1,800. But for the most part, there was only like 900 people around. So it's not like it's fallen drastically.
Right.
And I'm really curious on how many of those are new players. Like, how many people today still like go play MUDs?
That would be cool if you could find that. It would be really neat just to log into one of your old tunes, because you guys had friends lists in that, right? Or a way that you can see when people logged in.
I don't think so. I think it's like AOL Instant Messenger.
Oh, okay. Because that would be kind of it'd be kind of cool if you were able to log back in and just, holy crap, this person's still playing.
Oh, that would be insane if I saw people that were playing back when I played.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was a long time ago.
But yeah, and the game is pay to play too, right?
Yeah. And it's actually was a higher subscription model than games today. Like, it started off at like $12.99, which is cheaper, but that was only for one character. So if you wanted multiple characters, it was like $3 extra for each character, or you can get the premium pass, which gives you 10 characters for $21. So most people paid $21, and that's like more than today. But plus, they had merchants that would come in that you'd have to pay real money to join the merchant. It was more expensive than most games today to play.
I would be curious to see what the price is today, or you know, what their current pay model is. I mean, there has to be something. Of course, the servers can't be hard to maintain at all.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You'd probably maintain it on an iPhone now.
Yeah, and it's funny though, because that game was supposed to come out with its own MMO, and they developed the engine Hero engine, which was used in like Star Wars: Old Republic and stuff.
It's crazy. Just kind of goes to show you how close that community, you know, or how all these games are kind of interconnected in a roundabout way.
Right.
So, but yeah, GemStone.
Loved it. It's awesome.
I think
they also had Dragon Realms, which was Dragon Realms was, I didn't play as much, but it was almost like a sandbox version of that. Like, you actually had to do ability to level up. Like, if you wanted to level up your sneaking, you had to like sneak all the way through towns and stuff.
Now, one thing with that game as well, there was a lot of consequences if you PK'd or anything like that.
Yeah,
right?
like sometimes I wondered why they even had PvP, because like you got in a lot of trouble for it. Like, you can even get banned from the game. You know, it was weird. But like, if you did it by accident, whatever, there was jail. And like, I remember, so you used to have to go to this place that everybody would go for these. They were called massies in the game, but it was like mass buffs. And I had a sorcerer friend that was doing it, and he accidentally casted a spell that like killed the whole room. And he went to jail for so long, and he could never get his stuff back because it was so expensive to get his stuff back.
Yeah, that's insane. That's wow. Especially when if you're playing, you know, paying real money for some of that stuff. It's crazy. For me, if a game did that to me, came down that harsh, I don't know if I'd play again. You know, I'm paying you,
right?
But, you know, I think that's part of maybe the old MMO thing was, especially when you're RPing, I did wrong, so I'm gonna go to jail and sit there and do whatever I have to do. But I remember you telling me about GemStone just having those consequences, and I'd be scared. I don't think I would ever do anything.
No, you tried not to. Like I said, it wasn't a very PvP focused game, but you could steal and stuff like that, which could also let you in jail and stuff like that. But there wasn't much PvP in it. Like I said, they really discouraged PvP. Like, sometimes I wondered why it's even coded where they allowed it.
Right. Now, I think, you know, maybe move forward a little bit here. And the game that I probably like to hear about most from you is Ultima.
Yeah.
Now, I had a little bit of experience in it, but not all that much. Once again, it was basically Jmart saying, hey, come over here, try this game. It's amazing. And I end up going to a dungeon with a bunch of Hungarians, and it didn't end well for me, and I still have a twitch. But it was not good. But, so tell me about Ultima. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so Ultima Online was released in, like, 97-ish. And it's funny because I wanted to play Ultima Online on release. So I bought Ultima Online and I bought the strategy guide because it's my first graphic MMO. It's basically I can see everything I saw in the text-based game in real life. And but my computer couldn't handle a 250 megabyte download.
That's the second time that happened to you, by the way.
Well,
First time, Hockey Simulator.
Hockey Simulator 2000.
That was
painful.
Yeah.
So basically, for like 8 months, it took me to save up the money to get a new computer. And I read that player guide. It was like one of those thick player guides. Like, I knew probably more about that game than most people did, like, the second I joined. Because I read that thing like 90,000 times. I was just hooked on it. So I finally got my computer. Man, that was the best experience of my life. Like, probably my second most fondest memories in MMO.
Oh yeah, there was so much to do in the game, and that really was so sandboxy.
Yeah,
I mean, you could do whatever
it was the true definition of sandbox. I mean, they had no classes. If you wanted to get better at being an archer, you had to go out there and you had to fire your bow. You wanted to get better at cooking, you had to go cook. You wanted to get better at fishing, better go fish, boats. Player housing that was in the world that you had your shop set there. They had bounty systems. If you killed somebody, people didn't know necessarily who killed them because there was like other spells and stuff. So you had to hire like people that trained in like forensic evaluation, and you couldn't really just get resurrected. So some people had to have an ability called spirit speak, and you had to go find somebody with that and talk. Like, it was so in depth, the stuff you can do in that game.
Yeah, and that, I think, if there's something that I feel that is missing from really the MMOs today, it's really that level of, this is your game. You do what you want to do.
Yeah.
You know, but the forensic expert to me sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the bounty hunter system sounds awesome, you know, but I mean the player housing, everything.
Yeah, it was amazing.
You know, I can see why, especially, you know, looking back, and if you watch some YouTube videos on it and stuff, I can really see why people did nothing but play that game. I mean,
yeah,
it was so in depth. Now the one thing, and I love this story, I could probably hear it a million times, but it's this dragon story that Jmart has that you'll definitely have to tell in a second. But this kind of brings me up to that other point that I think back then, especially, now I definitely don't want to turn this into a podcast of back in my day.
Back in my day,
you know,
Sonny.
Yeah, I used to play on a 256.
Mm-hmm. My computer couldn't handle 250
right.
megabyte hard drive.
But the one thing that I'll say, I think, when it comes down to the player base, back then when you played a bad guy, you were RPing, right? Is you almost did it for the content and for, I know it sounds funny, but the benefit of the other players, because you got to have the bad guys.
Yeah, you had to have
right?
a bad guy in it.
And you definitely
but there was real repercussions for being a bad guy.
That's the other thing, is you have the bad guys, but there was a lot of repercussions.
Yeah.
You couldn't go into town, stuff
Right.
like that. But it was, I think it was a little bit in a different spirit than, let's say, some of the trolling and the griefing today.
Totally, 100%.
So that's another thing I kind of liked about the sandbox genre back then, was the players truly were the content.
Yeah, because now you can just kill anybody for no
Right.
reason, and nothing happens from it. No one loses anything. It's no big deal.
There was towns you couldn't even go in.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, unless I use an incognito spell.
Because what, Dark Lord, what were you?
Dreadlord.
Dreadlord Nalaman was an evil son of a... You were a douche.
I was a douche.
So, I don't want to make everybody wait for the story anymore, because this is actually pretty diabolical. But so tell me about the dragon incident, sir.
So in that game, like everything costs stuff. So like you couldn't just go cast your spells as many times as you want whenever they're on cooldown, because you actually needed regents, and some were very expensive. So not many people could cast like the highest level spells in the game. But one time I was walking through town, and there was this female in town that said, hey, psst, over here. I'll do whatever you want for some gold. You know, they're looking to ERP, I'm sure. And I'm like...
Oh, he was looking to ERP,
yeah,
too.
I was like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, come to my tower, because I had a tower in the game. I'm like, yeah, we can definitely do something. And they're like, okay, so they followed me to my tower. And when I got in there, the person's like, okay, what do you want me to do? I'm like, you'll do anything I want? They're like, yep, wink. So I actually summoned a ability in it called Stone Wall, and I put it over the door, and then I summoned a dragon. And I said, I want you to kill the dragon. And said I couldn't do that, so I had the dragon kill it, and then I took all their stuff.
Dude.
Yeah,
how many bounties were on your head after that?
There was a lot in that game.
Probably couldn't even step outside your tower.
Because there was also zones that had like really high level creatures, and you didn't just like teleport everywhere. Like there was magic teleports, but it wasn't like everyone could just do it. So you had to have bards that would hold back the enemies by like playing music. So our friends we would do escort missions, bringing like newbies across the land, and then when the mobs came, would have the bards stop playing the music, and then they would get attacked, and then we'd just take everything off of them.
Dude, diabolical.
But
once again, I think when it comes to that system, you were playing a role.
Yeah, and it was understood, like,
right,
because it wasn't like a mainstream today. Like everyone who played that game, it was kind of like RPing.
Right.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of like RPing. Everyone kind of knew the consequences. It was a lot different than today of just like trolling somebody or doing something just for the pure sake of it.
Yeah.
Because like I said, you got real repercussions. It's like with the titles that you get, like guards attack you. Everybody, like you turn red to everybody. You get bounties on you. Like you're constantly chased. It was a big deal.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I kind of miss. And I never thought, talking about PvP, I love PvP.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost hate open world now.
Yeah, I never thought I'd ever say that, but I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of open world PvP nowadays.
It used to add this level of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing outside of the game, outside of the mobs. Because in a lot of places, you go, if you're higher level than the mobs, and chances are they're not even going to give you, you're not going to catch any aggro. But you always had to keep an eye out for other players. And not to look at, wax poetically about, everybody was perfect. There was some griefing. But the community almost in itself would turn on that person.
Yeah,
if there was somebody that would just grief, I mean, it really was a neat aspect about it. And that's what I think with Ultima, the great part about it was, or at least just listening to you can play that way, and that's fine. But you're going to have repercussions.
Right.
But you're role-playing it, and it's almost a given. You almost had to watch who you trusted. Like the Hungarians who brought me to a dungeon.
Yeah.
It's like they just used me for fodder. So that's...
You shouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's not good, dude. Run away. So, to me, like I said, Ultima, they need more of that.
They do. Yeah, they need something like that again.
Yeah.
Like... But I don't know if it would still hold the same magic, because I don't know if the people who played it would treat it the same way.
No. You definitely have to make some amendments to it. And, well, it would take a developer with a certain amount of balls.
Yeah.
that...
And you would have to know your niche audience, too.
Right. You would have to know you're not going to have 5, 6, 700,000 people.
Yeah, because if you died, you lost all your stuff.
Right.
Like it was all player economy, so all the players, all the gear and stuff was crafted in the game until later on they had like some ranger pieces and stuff. But for the most part, it was all found in the game. But you lost everything that you were carrying.
Well, and that's kind of another thing I'm glad you kind of brought up is the player economy. To me, a sandbox isn't a sandbox until it has a completely player-driven economy.
Agreed.
That means the crafters are making all the armor, all the weapons. They make everything. They're the ones that almost drive the economy. Something that I think a lot of MMOs are missing is the kind of the relevance of the crafters just kind of went downhill. And for some reason, I loved crafting.
Yeah, it was fun. Well, because sometimes crafting back then was like running a business. Like it was no 100%. Joke. It was a whole game in itself because there was no like auction houses or anything.
Right. It was a mini game. You could almost say it was a mini game. It was like a business simulator. So yeah, and we'll definitely get into more games that involve that. But to me, Ultima really brought that out. You know. Mm-hmm. Anything else to add about Ultima or anything that I missed on that?
No, I think you know, because I was so into Ultima, I'll admit I never played EverQuest 1 really. Right. I played it for a very, very short time. I think I made a character and I got to like level 5, but I was just too into Ultima Online. Because the next big game that I played, which was a phenomenal game that's like always overlooked, is Asheron's Call.
That's another one. I don't think I even really ever saw EverQuest. Mm-hmm. Like I said, for the most part, you were the MMO guy, and I played other games. But, so EQ never really appealed to me. Now, I did know people that did play it, and I lost them. Like, I never saw them. Yeah. Very rarely saw them again. But Asheron's Call. The crazy part about that game, it was made in what, 99, 2000?
I think like 99.
If you see the game, the graphics aren't all that great.
They were great back then, though.
But the game just shut down in 97. Yeah. Or, I'm sorry, 17.
Yeah, 17. Yep. Yeah, it was, yeah, so, like, the cool thing about that game that, like, Ultima Online really didn't have was the ability to see, like enhancements on weapons, which is really cool. Like, cause you know, when I was playing Gemstone, you would always have like a fire sword, but you didn't see it. But in Asheron's Call, you actually got to see fire or lightning on your weapon, which was awesome. But they had a very cool, unique system with their spells that if you take like 3 spell scrolls or whatever and put them together, it has a chance of making something, but it doesn't always. So there were people that found spells, and back then the internet wasn't the same as it is today. You couldn't just go like to Wikipedia and download like all the recipes. Like the information wasn't out there. So you had people that had spells that nobody else had, and it was such a cool system. Like their whole leveling system was cool. It was like very open where you can just pick whatever abilities you wanted.
Right. It was once again a very sandboxy game. And when you listen to MMOs or listen to about MMOs, especially in their early years, Asheron's Call I don't think gets enough credit, especially because a lot of stuff in Asheron's Call actually pushed forward into other games that you know, Ultima and EQ both didn't have. So you know, even it's funny because Conan was revolutionary because of the way that when you attack, you could attack the head, attack the body, whatever.
Your attacks.
You could do that in Asheron's Call in 99.
Yeah, and in Asheron's Call, you actually had to aim your spells in your bow.
Right.
Yeah, you didn't just tab target them, so it was kind of like action combat, even though it wasn't purely.
Right. So for a lot of the games out there that say, well, you can't do action combat or, you know, more twitch fighting, yeah, you can. I mean, Asheron's Call did it. So
yeah, I didn't get a chance to play it as long as I would have liked. I played it for a while, but I was still pretty hooked on Ultima Online at the time. Yeah. So I would always end up going back to that. But I had great experience in that game. Very fond memories. It was a very, very uniquely done game. It was like one of the first games you didn't need to group as much as like some of the other ones, and it was very, very uniquely done. And I don't know why it never got as much credit because it was big back then.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it was a small little indie game. I mean, it was successful.
Now, this is one of those games that if you played the game, I would love to hear from you in the comments, because the people that did play that game, man, there was a love for that game like no other. I mean, even for a game that old, just to go down in 2017 is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, especially with how graphically challenged it was, you know, everything else.
Yeah, I heard they later did a graphic update, but I don't know how much of a graphic update it was.
But I mean, regardless, it really attests to a lot about the players and the gameplay. Because if the game was utter trash, you wouldn't have that long. Well, there's probably one or two games out there that
I'm sure.
But I mean, I would say that Asheron's Call. You know. But now another game. Now there was a little bit of a lull in the action for MMOs for about 2 years or so.
Yeah, I think like after Asheron's Call, Dark Age of Camelot came out, I think. But that's another game that I missed out on. Right.
Now, when I moved down here, I was dating Nikki, and her friends were really into, D&D and stuff like that. That's where I got my kind of introduced to Dark Age of Camelot. Not very much. You know, I basically walked in the rooms like, what are you guys doing? And the funny thing is I actually asked them, like, oh, okay, so it's an MMO online that's not text-based. You know, because I was so used to that. Other than seeing a little bit on Ultima. But it didn't look like Ultima. It was actually,
it was a free, yeah.
But that's a game that I wish I got more into MMOs, because that's another game that that's still out.
I kind of wish I wasn't so hooked into Ultima Online at the time.
Right.
Because that game, I hear people that did play it, they talk about it very passionately. Like how awesome the PvP was in it, and like their faction versus faction. I think it was like the first game that had the three factions,
yep.
Yeah, and that's very cool. I like when games do that from
I do
here
too.
on after.
I do too. Because it definitely keeps one faction from really kind of taking total control, because the other two factions can say, hold on,
up,
truce, let's go get those douchebags up on the hill over there. So but yeah, that's a game that I wish that I could have played. Now the game that we could have played also, which I didn't even know was out back then, was EVE in 2003.
I played EVE like once, but
the flight time
was one of my friends wanted me to play EVE, so I joined. I don't think this was at release. I think it was maybe even a year or so after release.
It was sometime after WoW, or after we were done with WoW.
And he's like, yo, so I got through the tutorial. I'm like, yo, this game's actually really cool. Like, I enjoy this game a lot. And he's like, all right, now come join our corporation. I'm like, all right, cool. How do I do it? He's like, yeah, you gotta come over. It's like an hour-and-a-half flight. Like, you gotta go through all these jump ports and stuff like that. And I'm like,
no.
I'm like, dude. I'm like,
no.
I'm like, there's no way. He's like, yeah, just watch a movie or something. I'm like, no. I want to play the game. I don't want to watch a movie.
Right.
So yeah, I never really played it again.
That's like watching all the Lord of the Rings movies and only editing it so they're just walking.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I think the next game I played was Asheron's Call 2.
See, now I never even knew until recently about Asheron's Call 2.
Yeah, it came out too soon. Like, it was like, what, 2 years or something after Asheron's Call 1?
Right.
And it was a different game. They almost like kind of tried going in a different direction, so their current player base didn't really like it. And it was updated graphics, but
not upgraded.
Yeah,
enough.
And then there was like other games that came out shortly after, like the next, Star Wars Galaxies,
right?
Which is mine and Trauma's absolute favorite MMORPG of all time.
100%. 100%.
That was the game that made me leave Ultima Online.
Yep. No, that Star Wars Galaxies for me. Now, this is one of those games that we will put on our rose-colored glasses.
Oh, we'll wax poetic.
Because part of the thing with Star Wars Galaxies is we did try it, and we played it for about a month.
Unreleased, yeah.
Right. And there was no mounts, there was no nothing, and it was such a big world. And to go to Jabba's palace for that theme park, I think we left for Mos Eisley. I can't exactly remember where, but it was a pretty much 20 to 30 minutes walking one way.
Mm-hmm.
So you go inside the theme park, you do what you'd have to do, and then you'd have to walk back out somewhere. And it was usually back to Mos Eisley, from what I can recall. Like I said, it's been 17 years. And the game was great to me, but the walking was just too much.
Even the only way to level or get money was to do those mission terminals.
Oh, yeah.
So you would have to go to the starport, and you'd have to click a mission terminal. And the further the mission out, the more it paid. So you'd want like the 2,000 meter ones, and you'd have to just walk back and forth. And it took so long to do anything. And that's the only way to really make money or anything on release.
Yeah, I mean, so in that aspect, yes, we definitely, can wax poetically. But we went back to the game, not too much longer after that, because I remember logging on and seeing that there was creatures that you could ride.
Modes, right?
Yeah, now creature handlers. And I called Jmart up. I said, "Oh my God, they have mounts!" And that's when we started playing again. And that was best decision ever. I'm glad I randomly picked it up.
Yeah,
but
shortly afterwards, they came out the mech mounts,
right?
Like the land speeders and stuff like that,
and which just even changed the game further.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm almost glad the game is gone now, because I don't know if I don't know if I would have any kind of career. I loved that game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could definitely tell that especially towards the end, the graphics were a bit outdated and everything else.
Yeah,
but the gameplay in that now. There's definitely different camps of Star Wars Galaxies, right? You have the people that lived and died, that the pre-CU was way better than post-CU.
Right.
I think we can all agree that the NGE is what killed that game.
Yeah.
But I guess before we kind of get into that, the things that I really loved about the game, once again, kind of the same things that Jmart talked about, was the housing. So you can buy the different houses, the guild houses, the small, medium, large, and later on they came out with a couple others. And then they had different architectural styles, like Tatooine, Theed, different ones. Naboo, I think Theed was on there.
Yeah, Naboo is Theed. Yep, that's our main base.
Right. So, but one of the things, housing just wasn't there, right? Just because you wanted a house. There was definite utility to the house. You can put all your workbenches up. You can, you can decorate it up. And the reason why you wanted to decorate it is because you could make your house into a store. There was, I can't remember if it was a skill set or whatever, but the higher you got, the more vendors that you were able to put in to put up for sale. And then you can also put up a machine. So you can get other vendors to come in and be a mall at your house. You could charge admission to go into these houses, which I thought was kind of cool, even if you charged a couple credits. But the crafting in the game, because especially there still was no quest, so it was all player based. You still were doing the mission terminals. You were still doing the player based content.
You're grinding,
right? You were grinding. You could still, when the Carillion Corvette came out, that we were
so excited about that thing.
So excited.
So excited.
Man. And then all of a sudden we got beat so bad. It was almost like you were so excited for the present under the tree. And then you opened it and it was socks.
Yeah. Socks that punch you in the face.
Like just punch you right in the ding ding. Like socks. That was bad.
That was so hard.
Yeah, we realized, you need a group for this.
Yeah, and we were geared too. It's not like we were.
No, we didn't go in there half-assed, but so there was other stuff you could do, but the big thing was crafting.
Mm-hmm.
Now
crafting was no joke either. Like you had to go out and you had to send the survey droids and stuff or sample the ground to find the best resources of it. which they change constantly. So you
Yeah,
couldn't just put your mining stuff down. So you had to keep looking for like the best things so you can build the best items. So not everybody could just build the best, like one click and you're making the best item.
Right. And, well, that was another thing is, and I always forget the guy's name, Quado or Wado or something.
Yeah.
But the guy made the best weapons on the server. Like,
yeah.
You'd go to his house/store, and there would just be a ton of people there waiting for this guy to put out more weapons.
Yeah, he liked the raid boss weapons.
Up until the last day, I could never even bring myself to throw away his weapons.
Mm-mm.
Like I had like a whole crate full of them. I mean, they were great weapons, and that was kind of the neat thing again about the game is the sense that people were famous in it.
Oh yeah.
You knew a lot of the players. If you made good stuff, I couldn't even imagine how much money that guy had in the game.
Dude, he had to be so loaded.
I know I used to sell him. I used to do pretty good with the mats. I'd sell him some mats every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you found the 999 rank stuff. But so that was another thing about the game is just like what Jmart just said was getting materials was even different.
Yeah, it was, and you had to put your mining machines down. You had to make sure that you had the plutonium fuel for the mining units to work. Because if they ran out, then they would stop doing when you're offline. And
that pissed me off so bad.
Dude, there's nothing worse than going to your mining
especially
unit.
when you're on like a great mat and you just forget to put the fuel
or because you didn't know when it changed either.
Right.
So sometimes you would log on thinking you're coming to some fatty stuff and the spawn changed. Like, son of a.
So you went from mining one item and all of a sudden it'd be almost a completely different item and a totally different if it was good or not. So that was really good and I enjoyed that. But I was also a medic in the game, which was nice because you really did, especially at the beginning, you did need a lot of buffs from the dancers. You needed to, all the stim packs.
Which was another cool part about the game was like dancers and entertainers.
Right. And that's what kind of made going to the cantinas such a social event because everybody had to go there.
Right. You needed it.
Right.
Because if you remember, even your mind and like your stuff got damaged permanently. You got like that black marker. So you had to get that healed.
Right. So you'd go watch a dancer. And then you just sit and talk around with everybody. That's how you usually found out what everybody was doing and where to be and where to go.
That was your forums.
Yeah, that was the forums. And if you had questions about the game, that's where you went. And it was cool.
Yeah, and the thing that people forget too is back then you could only have one character.
Right.
So those people that chose to do that were just people who enjoyed social aspect of MMOs.
Absolutely.
And it was their chat room. Like they had remember if you looked at their info, a lot of them would have like their top tippers and stuff like that, and you would just tip them for the buffs and
those were other people that probably made just a crap ton.
Oh my god, yeah, especially like the ones that got high enough where they can do those private dances and they got the big giant buffs. Yeah,
you'd have to get their attention somehow. I forgot. Then they could specifically focus on
right.
And then the CU came out.
Before that, though, Jump to Lightspeed came out, right? Jump to Lightspeed was before the CU.
Did it?
I'm pretty sure.
God, now I'm drawing a blank on that.
I'm pretty sure this is Jump to Lightspeed came out because Jump to Lightspeed came out only like a year after release.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I think you're right. Jump to Lightspeed is what really.
That's when that made the game the best game for me.
Right.
Yeah, like the fact that you had a full, complete game on the ground. And a full, I love the space, especially as, when I was growing up, I was a huge fan of X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter. Actually, funny, TIE Fighter was the first game that made me believe in propaganda, because that game legitimately made you feel like the Empire was right.
Wait a minute.
You're right, those rebel scums, they're terrorists.
Right?
And so, when Jump to Lightspeed came out, and you could literally have the TIE Fighters, X-Wings, A-Wings, B-Wings, Y-Wings, the TIE Advance, and you could have the big ships too, like the Millennium Falcon.
Right.
Each faction had their own type, but let's be honest, the Millennium Falcon was the coolest.
Pretty much.
But they actually needed multiple people to run it. You need the gunners.
Yep.
you had the co-pilot, but plus if something would get injured, you'd actually have to run to the
Have
thing
an
that was
engineer.
actually and fix it up. And it was so freaking awesome. You can PvP in space. You can mine. I had that mining ship.
Yep.
Yeah, it was so awesome.
And especially when it first came out, everybody was pretty much in space. And you were one of the premier crafters for the shipwrights. Once again, there was a lot to building a ship. You had to buy the right engines. You had to, and you still had to level up in all of it. But that's when, to me, that game was really at its peak.
100%.
But then we're talking about the CU. I don't think the CU killed it or hurt it.
I think
it cleaned it up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people complain about the CU, and I'm sorry for those that hated it. Like, to me, there was really two classes to play competitively in PvP before the CU, and that was rifle or sword, because you had 3 health bars. You had mind, or you had health, endurance, and mind, right? His endurance was the green, right?
Yeah,
or body, or whatever they
something
call
like
it.
that.
But the mind couldn't be healed.
Right.
So if you didn't play a class that didn't target the mind...
Yeah, so you get the people with a sword or a rifle just zip you right down, then you pass out or do whatever,
right?
And they just get you. So to me, the CU really cleaned that up. Now, and just about every game, and let's be honest, has a lot of glitches, a lot of faults, and the CU definitely had plenty of those,
right?
But I do think that it cleaned it up.
No, I agree. I do not think CU is a bad direction for it.
Right.
Like, to me personally, what ended up killing the game were Jedi.
And the NGE, I think, definitely kind of put the nail in the coffin. But the Jedi, to me, is what ultimately killed that game.
Like, if they would have stuck with their original idea behind them, it would have been okay. When they had like the permadeath system,
right?
So there was some real repercussions of playing them, but they were just so OP, which they had to be, because they were so hard to get. But they could ruin like 50-player fights. Like, they could just go in there with 2 of them and kill 50 people.
But not right. I mean, not only were they pretty much a world boss fight anyway, but what helped kill it was the fact that you had to pretty much play every class, right? In order. You had to level up the classes in the right way or whatever. Well, that also included the crafting.
Right, which flooded the market. And just totally... I had a really thriving architecture business, and I made furniture and everything else in the game. And it was really thriving. Once that came out and it was started to become widely known, everything just bottomed out. I mean, the player economy pretty much crashed. Yeah,
you could easily say it crashed.
Because their original concept was to never tell anybody how to do it. That eventually somebody would just happen upon it, and then like what I was told in stories, like SOV or whatever said, no, that's not good enough. We need Jedi in the game. They're a historic part, even though they don't fit that timeline.
No, not at all. But so then everybody became a Jedi, and
because then the village came out, and then it became way easier to become a Jedi. It took time still, but it became way easier because you knew exactly what you had to do.
And I think I hope if any games have ever learned a lesson from that game, is never introduce that much of an alpha class into the game, because that was the alpha class. Actually, one of the last times that I really logged in to play, other than there was occasions I'd log in and run my crafter, because I still love playing the business aspect of it, was we were going after that player-made city, and there was probably, I can't even tell you how many of us was on this raid, and I'd probably say easily 30 or 40. And next thing I know, on Vent, everybody's like, what the hell just happened? What just happened? And it was a handful of Jedis. 5, maybe 6 Jedis came through and wiped us all without us hardly even touching them.
Yeah, they were alpha.
Yeah, I mean, it was that's when I was like, okay, now there's enough Jedi in the game to actually ruin it. and they're no longer fearful. Because it was when we found that one Jedi, and we kept begging him to take out the lightsaber.
Yeah, the first Jedi I ever saw. But if they brought out their lightsaber, they could be attacked on sight by anybody. And it was like a permadeath system. Like, they would lose like so much if they died. Yeah. So he would not bring out his lightsaber. Nope. They should have kept it that way.
Well, I think even back then when we got wiped, I think it was like that. But the problem was when you got to the highest level of Jedi,
right, which was hard to do because you had to like go farm like at 3 a.m. and.
No, I'm not taking away from
I agree.
What it was or how hard it was, and you hate to take away somebody's hard work like that. But you introduce something that it to me the Jedi really broke the game.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably one of the reasons why they brought out the NGE.
NGE, what a poorly managed decision. Because not only was it a bad patch that changed everything about the game, the one that people loved because they wanted to buy the WoW audience.
Right.
Is they released it a day after the new expansion.
Right, what was it? Obi-Wan's
Trials
or something like that.
Trials of Obi-Wan, yeah. And then when Mustafar, it's like the day after. I don't know if it's exactly the day after, but it was really close.
I think it was like 2 weeks or something. But whatever it was, that was... And you know a company knows they're wrong when they do that.
Right.
Because there was no warning.
No.
There was no warning at all.
We all bought the expansion. They're like, oh, by the way, we're changing everything.
Right. And that NGE... Well, they got obsessed with WoW. They got obsessed with WoW's numbers.
Yeah, because they were a successful MMO at like 500,000 subscribers. Right. That was successful back then, but they weren't happy with that once WoW started.
Now, one of the things with the NGE that at least you can kind of appreciate is it did bring some content. It took away some at first, but it did bring some content into the game, which was needed. And I think that's one of the reasons why WoW, which is we'll talk about in the next segments, why that became so successful is because they gave you content. Sandbox, it's all ran by the players pretty much. Yeah. All the content.
The players are responsible for making the content.
So, you know, and if anything, those games were so important to be in guilds and to have an active friend group in it. But
and they had some cool guilds, like that Stormtrooper guild.
The Stormtrooper guild was awesome.
The TK-101s or whatever. I forget their names, but they all named themselves. You had to be named like TK with some numbers. And had to wear the Stormtrooper outfits. And
they would always guard, you know, Imperial cities. You knew that you couldn't start anything with those guys there. They were really a cool group.
They were.
And they just kind of added to the aesthetics of the whole game. And you'd always see him walk in patrols. I mean, that was
a cool RP group.
I was really close to going, man, maybe I need to switch to Imperial.
I wanted to. So, were we Imperial?
We were Imperial for a little bit, and then we ended up going to the Rebels because there were so many Imperials.
Because I had the ATST, so I know at one time.
Right. We were, but then we ended up going, like I said, we went to the Rebels, and then once we went to the Rebels, it seems like that's when that group came out. I was like, damn, I really want. But I think also the Stormtrooper gear wasn't cheap either, if I remember right.
Yeah, you had to get with like the faction points or whatever.
Right.
Like the same thing about the ATST with. Yeah, whatever that was. Can't really remember exactly.
But yeah, that was a great group. I used to love to PvP against those guys. But overall, the worlds were so big, you know.
Yeah. There were so many of them.
Right, there were so many of them. You can go wherever you wanted. That was a game that literally I enjoyed exploring, and to be honest with you, and just running around. It's crazy because looking back now, I don't know if I could actually sit there because, like I said, there was no content except for the mission terminals. You go to Dathomir and you would just take out Rancor nests.
AoE grind
for hours.
Yeah, you hit the nest. And you use AoEs and just any Rancors that spawn, you would just kill them too.
Yeah, it was Terrace Kasi and it was just AoE, just nonstop. And but for some reason that was a lot of fun back then.
It was.
Looking back on the game, it definitely had a lot of flaws, folks. Don't get me wrong.
No, it didn't. Best game ever.
Right. Damn you, serve heresy. But because of the sandbox nature of the game,
Well, and it was cool too because in that game they had different classes had different responsibilities outside of combat too.
Right.
Like I know smugglers, like which was my first job, they can make spices.
Yep.
And those spices were illegal that if you got caught with them, so you could smuggle people around with them.
Yep.
Plus you can slice the containers for people. Yep. And then bounty hunters later on, I know they were able to do player bounty missions, which were awesome too. Because I ended up switching bounty hunter when that came out with Terrakasi Bounty Hunter. Because you actually had to send droids out to look for the people and stuff like that. And, you know, medics obviously.
Right.
You know, so like every class kind of had like their own little unique thing they brought to the game too.
The game had an ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best I can say. It had the ecosystem. And the skill points were great because you could really do whatever you wanted. You could be a rifleman, swordsman, whatever. It was truly customized, and like I said, and that it being Star Wars helped a ton.
Yeah,
obviously. The lore of it all.
Yeah, if the game wasn't Star Wars, I don't know if I would have played that long. But
right, but just Star Wars, yeah, I'll take two. Please.
Sign me up.
You. That was the first game that I actually bought 2 copies of a game and paid two subscriptions, one for my main and then my other one for the crafter.
Yeah, because you can only have the one character.
But I mean, like I said, jump to light speed, flying around the Millennium Falcon or whatever it was, the Y Freighter or whatever.
Yeah,
that they called it. Great game,
awesome.
You know,
God, I loved every moment of that.
Absolutely.
I just love the space combat. Just being able to fly in an A-wing or.
It was sad that I would log in for 8 hours just to decorate the guild house.
Yeah. No, because you could, and it wasn't easy to decorate either. It wasn't just like, let me drag and click. It was like you had to move.
You had to click on it, type move left 50, and it would move over like 50, whatever it was, whatever the unit measurement was. And you're like, nope. Move right 10. Nope. Move left 3. And then you could move it horizontally. There was so much you could do. You actually made things. You'd take like staffs, and then you would take another flat piece of metal, whatever, and you can make what looks like a display case.
Right.
You know, so I mean, people
make the fish tanks out of like those pillows, like they're stacked to pillows.
Exactly. So
yeah, but it made a big difference though, because your house was the shop.
Yep.
And you ever walk into one of those shops that they didn't decorate, and you just kind of like walk out?
Yeah,
you're like, I don't trust this place.
Nope, not at all. It's sketchy. They don't care. You know. So that's just one of the reasons why I truly love Star Wars Galaxies. Mm-hmm. Is it was just so immersive.
It was.
I mean, it was just super immersive. But
it brought you into the world, that's for sure.
Yeah. Now, during our little hiatus that we took when we first started the game, we discovered another game.
Best
and
game
now,
ever.
kind of a little bit of a kind of back a little bit. We were at a big guild. We founded a big guild called Big Red One in 1942, and played with amazing.
In the game 1942,
Yeah.
We didn't find them.
Yeah.
We're not that old.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we played at BF 1942 and played with an amazing group of guys and girls, and so we played a lot of these games together. Like, you know, Star Wars Galaxies, a bunch of us came in.
Right.
Well, when we left Star Wars Galaxies, because there was no mounts, we were looking for something else to do in between seasons of 42. And we found probably
the greatest 3 weeks of our life.
Greatest 3 weeks ever. Horizons. Empire of Astaria, which I think now is called something of Astaria.
I think it might just be called like Knights of Astaria.
Knights of Astaria, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even believe the game's still around.
I can't believe it either. But that game actually, at the time, was pretty legit. It was kind of reminded me of what WoW was. You know, it was a lot of tab targeting. Like, grant you, I could be remembering this game kind of skewed, but they had the community crafting, which is awesome.
Yep.
Like, if you wanted to build a house, like people could just go up to your house and start adding stuff to it.
Yeah, and I think you had to buy a lot first, and then there's a little thing out there. It's like, I'll throw some wood in here.
Right, and you can actually set up a thing where you can pay people when they do it too. I don't know why. I really remember that that vine place. That had the big giant green vines with the blights.
Yep. No, with the blights too.
Yeah.
There was another area that it was pretty close to the beginning area, and just this big large area, and it was a hill, and the hill was just full of blights, and you just go over there and kill stuff. But that was one of the first games that I really encountered missions.
Right.
And I think that's the reason why at first we're like, oh my god, this game is amazing.
Yeah.
Is there wasn't player-made content. It was, you go to this person, you get the quest, you kill 10 things, you go back to them, and that's pretty much wash, rinse, repeat. But at the beginning, the graphics were pretty good for the time.
For the time, yeah.
We're like, this world is so beautiful.
And there's like the first and only game that you could like be a dragon.
Right, but I want to say you had to get to like level 50 or something like that before you could.
Yeah, I don't remember how it worked.
Right.
All I know is that you didn't get.
You couldn't do it right away
and
at the beginning.
You couldn't get loot. Your whole entire thing was to have a hoard of gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that, and then eventually you can fly. And
right. It
was.
We definitely didn't stick around for that portion, but I just remember Saktos and I were going somewhere, and we were both talking. It's like, man, I don't know if it gets any better than
this game. Is the greatest game.
And I mean, we would even sometimes call off a practice or a scrimmage just to keep playing this game because we were enamored with it.
Yeah, we thought we'd play it forever.
Yeah, I mean, and we we kept telling one guy, Coasty, you gotta play this game. You gotta play this game. It's amazing.
You won't regret it.
Yep. And he's like, well, you guys already tried to get me into Galaxies and you guys quit playing it. And I don't know. It's like, we're not stopping this game. Like this is this is the off-season game. Yeah. Mark my words. We will never stop playing Horizons. And it was weird because one morning we lived together at the time, you know, and we had this room. We had our computer set up next to each other and everything. And it was like we woke up one morning and said, what are we doing? That game is horrible.
Yeah, like no one talked each other into it either. It's just everyone kind of woke up at the exact same time and went, what? What did I... No. Yeah, I don't want to play this no more.
Right. Well, one of the things that I liked about the game is they had invasions. And I think this is one of the things that kind of turned us off from the game.
Yeah, because there's the first game I've really played that had invasions since the text-based GemStone. Right.
And I thought that was just such a neat feature that something would trigger some kind of event. Like I said, forgive us, it's been 17 years for a game.
Yeah, played for 3 weeks in. Yeah.
But something triggered an invasion. I think at the time it was these big giant wolves.
Werewolves, I think. Yeah.
And they came into these towns. And so all of us got together and said, let's go. We're going to show those turds boss.
Like, we were high level because we were playing when it first came out and playing constantly, too. So it's not like we were, like, the low-level people.
Right. No, we were definitely that 1%ers at the time. And we went up to try to defend the town, and it was...
We got smacked.
Rip.
Oh, my God.
There was tears. There was...
Yeah.
You know... it was bad. And I think that was, at least for me, I can say that's when I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, something's wrong here.
Yeah, something is off with this game.
Something's wrong.
And it was, like I said, it was shortly after. I'm not talking about just Jmart and I. I'm talking about like everybody who played with the Saktos.
Yeah, everybody.
Hippie, everybody was just like, nope. Now, here's where the funny part about Coasty comes in, is we wake up one morning and say, this game sucks. Well, who just bought the game and downloaded it?
Coasty. Poor Coasty.
Oh, he was like, I'm never following you guys into a game again. But
he ended up following us in a while.
And he was already pretty grumpy, but good guy. But yeah, he was like, I'll never follow you guys again.
He's so mad.
But like I said, that's the thing we've always spoke about when it comes to Horizons. Best game ever for 3 weeks.
For 3 weeks.
Didn't get better. But kind of hindsight being 2020, if you look at Horizons, they were almost ahead of their time about what the audiences really wanted.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't execute well.
No. They did not execute well.
But they were definitely ahead of their time.
Yep.
You know?
For sure.
And then after that, and I think this will probably be the last one for this particular podcast.
Yeah, we'll start the early part 2004 before the Juggernauts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, before we get into the big dogs.
It's City of Heroes.
Yeah, City of Heroes. The neat thing about City of Heroes to me was superheroes wasn't that big back then.
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, because that was like 2004. That was like before Iron Man and stuff, right?
Oh,
yeah,
way before. I think Spider-Man might have been out.
Maybe, yeah.
But for the most part, you had us comic book nerds that,
like superheroes, but it
Right.
it wasn't mainstream.
No, not like it is today. And that game, that was another game where I was really in love with it really quick and fell out of love with it almost just as fast. I'm not going to say it was Horizons level crash, but it was definitely, and we did Corrupt, loved that game. I think he had 6 or 7 max characters. But that was just one of those games. What I loved about it was the customization was unparalleled at the time. But
the cosmetics.
You're right.
Yeah, unfortunately, not so much with your character development.
No. But yeah, the cosmetics looked amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But that was another game that had quests.
Yeah, even though that was another bad part about the game, because it was just you'd go to the same door, but it would look slightly different inside, and it was just pretty much repeating this running back and forth of doing those doors.
Yeah, kind of. Well, like what you said before is one of the best parts, especially after you hit max, was doing the costume contest under the Atlas.
Yeah, that was pretty much all Endgame was for us. Like, because I know me and my wife actually played it for a while. We played it all the way through City of Villains. But yeah, most of the time you would either run costume contests or you'd participate in them. Because that was pretty much just it.
Now, I've definitely heard that the game got better. It got a little bit more immersive for people.
Yeah.
And that was definitely, I think, to me, a niche market.
I think City of Villains should have came out at the same time as City of Heroes. Because by the time City of Villains came out, like, the heroes were already, like, so established. And, like, I could never personally get into Villains. Like, I bought City of Villains, but I could never really get into playing one because, for one, their zones were all drabby, which makes sense. I mean, they're villains. But you felt so far behind.
Right. But like, one of the things I really kind of dug about the game is being a flyer, or that you can jump, on top of the buildings.
That was cool. Or like there's a blimp.
Yep.
Yeah, you could just get on the blimp.
Yep. And so I mean, and it seemed like it was a big world, which was weird.
Yeah, even though it really wasn't that big, but it did seem pretty big.
They did a really good job with the city, but every quest was pretty much the same. You would just run into a building, you would beat up a bunch of criminals, and wash, rinse, repeat. So that pretty much kind of rounded out at least my experience with City Heroes. I played that one probably for a couple months, I would say, before I was just like, and I think I went back to Galaxies. I think I was in Galaxies as well around that time.
Yeah, I think we both.
So I think we were just. I think it was just one of those things. Oh, let's try the new game. And for me, at least, Galaxies really got in the way of a lot of games moving forward with how much we played it. But
yeah, I played it off and on for a while, but sadly enough, I don't have much to say about it just because there really wasn't that much content to it.
Right.
Yeah, there really wasn't that much to do. Like I said, most of my time was just showing off my costumes.
But man, people that love that game.
Oh man, they loved that game. They loved it.
But yeah, so, but like you, I can't really talk too much about it, and that's a game that I played. Yeah.
There just was not much to it.
Right.
But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. Like I said, this was basically pre-97 to early 2004.
Right.
Next episode, we'll go into the 2 Juggernauts because I think everyone knows what's coming next. You have the big WoW and EQ2 releases. So we'll go into those in the next segment. We're hoping to break this up in like 3 different segments.
Right. So I think the next one's going to be 2004 to about 2011, I think is what we're kind of looking at, because I think that's a huge chunk of the MMO. So
that was when the big companies were still pumping them out, like
where every time you turned around, something new was being developed.
Yeah,
so
it's been insane. But yeah, if you guys have any comments or anything, let us know what your favorite MMO of that time was, or what feature, or if we did miss an MMO that you enjoyed that we didn't get a chance to get to, like EverQuest or Dark Age of Camelot or whatever. Just leave it in the comments below.
Absolutely.
You can also follow on social medias, JCat Gaming TV on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch, where you can also catch us live or not us, but me and my wife, Sassy Cat, every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday.
I'm not Sassy Cat.
Yeah, not Sassy Cat. From 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. Eastern Time. But yeah, it was super fun. One thing we love to do is we love to discuss MMOs. We always talk about either MMOs, sports, or nerdy movies. Like that's 99% of our conversations on the phone.
Really, that is it. And we'll talk about the same stuff every time. Yeah, it's like you could almost see the progression.
Yeah, for hours too. Like I wear out the floor just by pacing.
Yep.
Talking.
But definitely want to hear what people have to say. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be interesting to hear folks that listen, that played games back then and what their thoughts on it. Or
even what a new player's thoughts is on a game from back then,
absolutely.
It's a totally different landscape.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of important to hear too. Is did any of that what we talked about kind of make like, oh, that would be interesting to hear, or to absolutely not. So definitely let us know.
Yeah, so if you guys enjoy the content, please like, comment, and subscribe. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you, Trauma, for joining. Anything you would like to say?
Yeah, just happy to be here, had fun, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
All right, y'all, you have a wonderful night, and thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate you.